What if I told you that the person you think you are is only a fraction of who you could become? What if beneath your habits, your fears, your borrowed beliefs, and the expectations placed upon you by family, society, and culture, there exists a stronger, sharper, more dangerous version of you waiting to be forged? Not discovered, forged. Most people move through life half asleep. They inherit opinions without questioning them. They chase goals they never consciously chose. They measure success by standards they never designed. And then they wonder why they feel empty, restless, disconnected. Deep inside, something whispers that this cannot be it. That comfort is not fulfillment. That safety is not strength. That fitting in is not the same as becoming. There is a sentence that cuts through illusion like a blade. Become who you are, not who they expect you to be, but who you truly are at your highest, rawest, most disciplined potential. This is not a soft motivational slogan. It is a challenge. It is a confrontation. It demands that you look at your life and ask uncomfortable questions. Are your values truly yours, or are they inherited scripts? Are your ambitions born from your inner fire, or from comparison and pressure? Are you building yourself consciously or drifting? To become who you are requires destruction before creation. You must dismantle the false layers, the mask of approval, the addiction to validation. The comfort of mediocrity. You must face your weaknesses without excuse and your strengths without arrogance. You must confront the part of you that prefers ease over excellence. And here is the truth most people avoid. Growth will hurt. Transformation will isolate you. Discipline will demand sacrifice. But comfort has never produced greatness. Ease has never sculpted strength. Fire is what tempers steel. Imagine living with such clarity that your actions align with your deepest convictions. Imagine walking into a room not seeking approval, but radiating self-mastery. Imagine waking up each day, not to escape life, but to shape it deliberately. That is the difference between existing and becoming. This journey is not about perfection. It is about evolution. It is about taking radical responsibility for your character. It is about understanding that you are both the sculptor and the stone. Every habit chisels you. Every decision defines you. The real question is, are you becoming by default or by design? Stay with me until the end, because we are going to confront the illusions that keep you small. We are going to dismantle the herd mentality, reframe suffering, and redefine what it means to live at your highest level. And by the end of this, you will not just understand the idea of becoming who you are, you will feel the weight of it. Because once you truly see it, you can never return to comfortable ignorance again. When we hear the phrase, self-discovery is self-creation, we are immediately confronted with a powerful shift in perspective. Most people grow up believing that somewhere inside them lies a fixed identity waiting to be uncovered, like a treasure buried beneath the surface. They assume that if they search deeply enough through reflection, personality test, or the approval of others, they will finally find themselves. But this comforting idea is precisely what Friedrich Nietzsche challenges. For him, the self is not a hidden object to be discovered. It is a dynamic force to be shaped. You are not a finished product concealed beneath layers of confusion. You are raw material, and raw material demands craftsmanship. Nietzsche's philosophy rejects the passive model of identity. He believed that the modern individual too often becomes a mirror of society, absorbing values, beliefs, ambitions, and moral codes without questioning them. From childhood, we are told who to be. We are handed definitions of success, respectability, intelligence, and morality. We are praised when we conform and subtly punished when we deviate. Over time, we begin to mistake this conditioning for our true self. But Nietzsche would argue that what most people call their identity is simply an accumulation of external influences. It is inherited, not earned. Self-creation begins the moment one questions these inherited scripts. It requires the courage to ask, are these values truly mine? Do these ambitions reflect my inner drive, or are they borrowed from expectation? This is not an easy process. It destabilizes the comfortable illusion that life has already been mapped out for us. But Nietzsche believed that discomfort is the birthplace of authenticity. To create oneself, one must be willing to dismantle the old structures of borrowed identity. This dismantling is what Nietzsche described metaphorically as the spirit's transformation. First comes the camel, burdened with obligations, carrying the weight of tradition and duty, duty. The camel says yes to everything imposed upon it. Then comes the lion, who rebels and declares a no to false authorities. But rebellion alone is not enough. The final transformation is the child, the creative force that says a sacred yes to life and begins to build new values. Self-creation is not merely rebellion against society. It is the artistic act of constructing a new way of being. To understand self-creation, we must also understand responsibility. If you are not something predetermined, then you cannot blame fate, society, or circumstance for the shape of your character. This is both terrifying and empowering. It means that every choice, every habit, every discipline you cultivate is sculpting you. You are constantly becoming. The question is whether that becoming is intentional or accidental. Most people drift into identities shaped by convenience and fear. Nietzsche calls us to something higher, to deliberate self-authorship. This is why struggle becomes central to the process. If you are creating yourself, then hardship is not an interruption of your identity, it is part of its formation. Resistance strengthens will. Failure clarifies direction. Criticism tests conviction. In this sense, suffering becomes a tool of refinement. A sculptor does not complain about the chisel striking the stone. The strikes are what reveal the form. Likewise, life's pressures reveal what you are willing to stand for and what you are willing to abandon. Self-creation demands endurance because comfort rarely produces depth. Yet self-creation is not about becoming someone else. It is not imitation of heroes or blind admiration of greatness. Nietzsche despised imitation because it denies individuality. To create yourself is to recognize your unique drives, talents, instincts, and passions, and to cultivate them boldly. It requires deep honesty. What energizes you? What challenges awaken your strength? What ideals feel alive within you rather than imposed from outside? These questions are not answered once and for all. They evolve as you evolve. The self is not a static sculpture. It is an ongoing work of art. There is also an element of solitude in self-creation. To step away from the herd is to risk misunderstanding. Society prefers predictability. It is comfortable when people follow established paths. But the one who seeks to create himself may feel isolated, especially in the beginning. Nietzsche did not romanticize this loneliness. He acknowledged it as a necessary stage. Solitude allows reflection without constant noise. It gives space to hear one's own inner voice rather than the chorus of approval and criticism from others. In solitude, one confronts both strengths and weaknesses without disguise. However, self-creation is not selfishness. It is not about rejecting all moral responsibility. Rather, it is about developing a personal standard of excellence that goes beyond mere compliance. It is about asking not what is acceptable, but what is the highest expression of my potential. This pursuit demands discipline. It requires cultivating habits that align with your chosen values. It requires consistency when motivation fades. Creation is not a moment of inspiration. It is a lifetime of refinement. Perhaps the most profound aspect of self-creation is the recognition that you are always in the process of becoming. There is no final version of you waiting at the end of the road. Each achievement reveals new horizons. Each transformation opens new challenges. Nietzsche's insight frees us from the illusion of a fixed destiny. Instead of asking, "Who am I?" in a static sense, we begin asking, "Who am I becoming?" This shift moves identity from a noun to a verb. It is active, evolving, and shaped by will. In the end, self-discovery is self-creation, means that authenticity is not found in passive introspection alone, but in courageous action. It means that you must decide which values deserve your loyalty and then live them with intensity. It means recognizing that you are both the sculptor and the stone. The world may influence the tools available to you, but it cannot determine the form you choose to carve. To become who you are is to accept that your life is an artistic project. It is to understand that your character is not inherited destiny, but cultivated strength. It is to take ownership of your evolution. And perhaps most importantly, it is to embrace the idea that greatness is not something you stumble upon. It is something you build, choice by choice, struggle by struggle, until the person you have created stands firmly in alignment with the deepest truth of your will. To fully grasp Nietzsche's second keynote, overcoming the herd mentality, must first understand what he meant by the herd. In his philosophy, the herd is not just a group of people. It is the collective social, moral, and cultural pressures that dictate what is considered normal, acceptable, or desirable. The herd represents conformity, mediocrity, and unquestioned obedience. It is a force that shapes individuals before they have a chance to shape themselves. From the moment we are born, we are immersed in a system of rules, traditions, and expectations. We are told how to behave, what to value, and which paths will lead to success or social approval. In many ways, the herd is comforting because it provides guidance, structure, and a sense of belonging. But Nietzsche warns that comfort comes at the cost of authenticity. When people follow the herd unquestioningly, they forfeit the opportunity to discover or create their own unique identity. Overcoming the herd mentality is not simply a matter of disagreeing with popular opinion. It is a deeper, more courageous act that requires awareness and deliberate effort. Nietzsche believed that most people are enslaved by habit and expectation. They imitate authority figures, copy societal ideals, and adopt the goals of others without reflection. These individuals rarely stop to ask whether their beliefs are truly their own, or if they are just echoing what they have been taught to think. The first step in overcoming the herd is recognizing this invisible influence. It is the realization that many of the values we hold are inherited rather than chosen. This recognition is uncomfortable because it challenges the illusion of autonomy that most people cling to. A person who begins to question the herd risks social disapproval, isolation, and internal conflict. Yet this discomfort is necessary for growth. Once awareness is established, the next step is resistance. Resistance is not rebellion for the sake of defiance, nor is it an attempt to provoke others. It is a measured internal assertion of individuality. It involves asking, which of my beliefs and desires are genuinely mine, which are imposed by tradition, culture, or expectation? Nietzsche saw this resistance as a form of courage. To defy the herd is to risk being misunderstood or ridiculed. It is to stand against the tides of conformity. In a society that rewards conformity and punishes deviation, this requires moral and psychological fortitude. It demands the willingness to endure discomfort, criticism, and even loneliness for the sake of authenticity. This struggle against the herd is intimately linked with the development of what Nietzsche calls the will to power. The will to power is not merely a desire for dominance over others. It is the drive to assert one's creative and life-affirming potential. Overcoming the herd requires the courage to impose your own order on your life rather than passively accepting external dictates. It is about taking responsibility for the formation of your character, values, and destiny. By resisting the herd, you exercise your will and begin to carve a path that reflects your true nature. Nietzsche suggests that those who cannot or will not resist the herd risk becoming shadows of themselves, living lives that are safe but shallow, predictable but devoid of meaning. One of the most critical challenges in overcoming the herd is the subtlety of social influence. The herd rarely exerts pressure through explicit commands or threats. Instead, it shapes behavior through norms, subtle praise, and condemnation, and through the constant presence of collective opinion. Many people internalize these expectations without even realizing it, mistaking them for personal values. Nietzsche's insight is that the most dangerous chains are often invisible. They are the rules we follow unconsciously, the judgments we accept without question, and the ambitions we pursue because they seem natural or expected. Freedom, in Nietzsche's philosophy, is not simply the absence of external constraint. It is the conscious rejection of internalized conformity. Overcoming the herd also involves cultivating independent judgment and moral creativity. Nietzsche argued that true individuality arises when one is capable of evaluating values, rejecting those that are false or limiting, and creating new ones that affirm life and personal growth. This process requires critical thinking, introspection, and moral courage. It demands a willingness to accept that the values of the herd, comfort, security, popularity, may be insufficient or even harmful to the flourishing of the individual. So, to think and act independently is to risk misunderstanding, but it is also the only path to authenticity and self-realization. The process is not solitary in a simplistic sense. Nietzsche did not romanticize complete isolation or detachment from society. Rather, he emphasized that authentic engagement with life requires standing apart when necessary, so one can observe, reflect, and choose consciously. The herd is powerful precisely because it surrounds us everywhere, in families, schools, workplaces, and culture. To resist it, one must cultivate awareness in these contexts, learning when to conform strategically and when to assert autonomy decisively. This balancing act requires subtlety, wisdom, and constant vigilance. Overcoming the herd also has a profound psychological dimension. Nietzsche recognized that most people seek approval, belonging, and recognition. The herd satisfies these needs, but at the cost of individuality. Rejecting the herd requires confronting insecurity, self-doubt, and fear of rejection. It involves developing inner confidence and self-reliance. Nietzsche emphasizes that authentic individuals do not reject the herd out of arrogance or disdain. They reject it out of necessity for self-realization. They understand that true fulfillment cannot come from imitation or passive acceptance, but only through the courageous pursuit of one's own path. Finally, the act of overcoming the herd is a lifelong endeavor. It is not a single decision, but a continuous process of self-examination, resistance, and creative self-expression. Society constantly pressures individuals to conform, and the human psyche naturally gravitates toward comfort and approval. Therefore, one must remain vigilant, continually questioning motives, evaluating influences, and refining values. Nietzsche's call to overcome the herd is an ongoing invitation to courage, discipline, and the relentless pursuit of authenticity. It is the recognition that a life worth living is not measured by conformity, but by the integrity and creativity of one's unique existence. In conclusion, Nietzsche's keynote on overcoming the herd mentality teaches that true individuality requires awareness, resistance, and moral courage. It is the conscious act of rejecting the inherited values, expectations, and pressures that seek to shape us unconsciously. It is a process of self-liberation and the assertion of the will to power, a commitment to thinking, acting, and living in alignment with one's own nature. By overcoming the herd, we open the door to authentic existence, self-creation, and the realization of our highest potential. It is a journey that demands strength, vigilance, and perseverance, but it is the only path to becoming who we truly are. Growth, transformation, and the pursuit of one's authentic self are never painless. Life as Nietzsche understood it is an arena of challenge, struggle, and confrontation with one's own limitations. He recognized that suffering is not an accident or a flaw in the human condition. Rather, it is an essential component of becoming stronger, wiser, and more complete. To truly develop one's character, to reach toward the full expression of potential, one must engage with discomfort, loss, failure, and hardship. These experiences are not obstacles to be avoided, but tools for refinement, shaping the individual in ways that comfort never could. In this sense, the adversities we encounter are not merely endured. They are integrated into the very process of self-formation. Every difficulty is an opportunity to test resilience, clarify priorities, and deepen understanding of what it means to live intentionally. Nietzsche often employed the metaphor of the forge or the sculptor to describe this process. Just as a sword is strengthened in fire, so too is the human spirit tempered through trials. The pressure of struggle, the resistance encountered, and the endurance required all contribute to the development of inner strength. Those who seek a life free of suffering may achieve comfort, but they risk remaining superficial, untested, and unshaped. Pain, when approached consciously, becomes a vehicle for insight. It forces introspection, demands adaptation, and exposes areas where courage, discipline, and creativity are needed. Without engagement with difficulty, the self remains incomplete, a potential never realized. This engagement requires a shift in perception. Most individuals interpret suffering as a signal to retreat, a reason to blame external circumstances, or a justification for inaction. Nietzsche challenges this instinct, urging a reorientation in which suffering is seen as a necessary ingredient for growth. When one encounters hardship, it is not merely an inconvenience. It is an opportunity for transformation. Every challenge holds information about one's limits, strengths, and values. By facing and processing adversity, the individual discovers capacities that might have remained dormant in a life of ease. In this sense, life's difficulties are akin to mirrors, reflecting both weakness and potential, demanding a conscious response rather than passive avoidance. Struggle also cultivates independence and self-reliance. When life is easy, one becomes accustomed to external supports and predictable routine. Dependence on comfort, approval, or security can dull initiative and obscure the self. Confrontation with challenges, however, requires initiative, resourcefulness, and courage. It forces the individual to engage directly with reality, to make decisions under pressure, and to accept responsibility for consequences. In this way, adversity develops autonomy and sharpens judgment. The process may be uncomfortable, even painful, but the reward is a stronger, more capable, and more authentic self. There is also a psychological depth to experiencing hardship. Pain reveals the layers of belief, habit, and attachment that have gone unquestioned. It exposes the fragility of self-image and the illusions that comfort often fosters. By confronting suffering rather than fleeing from it, individuals are compelled to examine their motivations, desires, and fears. This introspection allows for discernment of what is genuinely meaningful versus what is superficial or imposed by external pressures. Each challenge presents an opportunity to strip away pretension and superficiality, leaving the individual more in touch with their essential nature. Suffering, then, is not merely an obstacle, but a teacher, instructing in ways that joy alone cannot. This process is cumulative. Each trial endured, each difficulty confronted, adds to the architecture of the self. Successes alone cannot create depth. Without the contrast provided by struggle, achievement may feel hollow. The moments of tension, conflict, and uncertainty build resilience and perspective. They cultivate patience, humility, and discernment. Nietzsche understood that the path towards self-realization is rarely linear or smooth. It is often marked by setbacks, failures, and contradictions. These experiences, rather than undermining development, are integral to it, providing texture, nuance, and richness to character. Moreover, embracing challenge fosters creativity and innovation. Comfort tends to reinforce habitual thinking, discouraging experimentation and risk-taking. Difficulties demand adaptive strategies and inventive solutions. When conventional paths fail, the individual is prompted to explore new possibilities, discover untried approaches, and exercise imagination. This creative engagement with reality not only enhances problem-solving, but also strengthens the capacity to act in alignment with one's unique vision. Transformation is not accidental. It is cultivated through active confrontation with the unpredictable, the resistant, and the challenging. There is also a spiritual and existential dimension to engaging with life's difficulties. Nietzsche suggests that encountering and integrating suffering leads to a deeper affirmation of life itself. When one is willing to confront the full spectrum of experience, the pain, the uncertainty, the loss, life becomes a richer, more potent canvas for self-expression. Avoiding suffering may protect one temporarily, but it limits the depth of engagement with existence. By embracing challenge, one cultivates a profound sense of vitality, a recognition that life, in all its complexity, is worthy of commitment and creative response. The trials themselves become evidence of the capacity to endure, adapt, and grow. Fear of failure, discomfort, or criticism must be acknowledged but not allowed to dictate choices. Nietzsche emphasizes that true strength arises not from avoiding adversity, but from actively choosing to face it. This involves deliberate action, disciplined effort, and a willingness to navigate uncertainty. It is through this engagement that individuals begin to move beyond reactive existence toward intentional self-shaping. Importantly, the process is deeply personal. No external formula can substitute for the individual's engagement with their own challenges. Each person must confront obstacles in their own context, wrestle with their own limitations, and extract meaning from their own experiences. The journey is subjective, and the lessons learned are unique to each individual. Nietzsche's insight underscores the responsibility of the self in its own formation. Growth is not a passive acquisition, but an active process of transformation, guided by conscious engagement with life's demand. In practical terms, embracing this approach involves cultivating resilience, reflection, and adaptability. It requires observing one's reactions to hardship, learning from mistakes, and consciously applying insights to future actions. It demands persistence, self-discipline, and the ability to endure discomfort without succumbing to despair. Over time, the cumulative effect of these practices strengthens the individual's capacity to act authentically, to pursue meaningful goals, and to maintain integrity in the face of external pressures. The process is ongoing, iterative, and never fully complete, but it continuously shapes the individual toward greater depth, coherence, and vitality. Ultimately, the engagement with challenge reveals the paradoxical truth that what is painful can also be profoundly empowering. By confronting hardship directly, the individual discovers capacities, insights, and strengths that would otherwise remain hidden. Life's difficulties, when approached consciously, provide the raw material for transformation, enabling the cultivation of resilience, wisdom, and authenticity. This approach reframes suffering from an obstacle to an essential component of growth, an active participant in the ongoing creation of the self. By integrating struggle into the process of self-realization, one achieves not only endurance but also mastery, creativity, and a deeper connection with life itself, transforming adversity into a vehicle for personal evolution. Reaching the highest expression of one's potential is not a pursuit of comfort or ease. It is a demanding, often solitary journey that requires courage, vision, and unwavering commitment to self-mastery. Nietzsche believed that ordinary existence is dominated by routine, convention, and the acceptance of mediocrity. Yet within each individual lies the capacity to transcend these limitations and cultivate a life that reflects the fullest realization of their abilities and instincts. Quote, "This pursuit demands more than passive aspiration. It requires active engagement with one's deepest drives, the deliberate shaping of character, and the creation of values that affirm life rather than simply conform to external expectations." The individual striving toward this ideal must confront fear, doubt, and the weight of social pressures while remaining steadfast in the pursuit of personal excellence. Central to this idea is the concept of self-overcoming. Human beings, Nietzsche argued, are not fixed entities. They are dynamic, evolving processes capable of transformation through effort, discipline, and conscious choice. To live at the highest level of one's potential requires recognition of one's weaknesses and limitations, without succumbing to them. It involves the ongoing refinement of skills, habits, and character traits that align with one's own vision of excellence. This is not self-improvement in a superficial sense, nor is it about accumulating accolades or material success. It is about cultivating a depth of being, a coherence between inner conviction and outward action, and the courage to live authentically according to one's unique capacities. This path also demands the rejection of comfort as a guiding principle. True development emerges in the face of resistance, in the deliberate engagement with challenges that test endurance, creativity, and resolve. By confronting difficulties deliberately, individuals cultivate resilience, sharpen their judgment, and clarify their priorities. Integrity in action and thought is therefore inseparable from the realization of potential, as it ensures that achievements are authentic rather than hollow or imposed. This process is deeply transformative, affecting every aspect of life. Every challenge you face from this moment forward can either shrink you or sharpen you. Every criticism can either wound your ego or refine your resolve. Every failure can either become your excuse or your forge. Becoming who you are means embracing that forge.